Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Philosopher, the Stoic, and the Teddy Bear. This is episode 12. We are airing on Tuesday, December 2nd, and I will be acting as the host. I am joined by my co host, Mr. J.P. Berg, and Mr. Chris Erickson. He will not be able to make it today, so we have gotten our close friend, Mr. Andre Milosh, to sub in. Mr. Milosh, thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and thank you to GP, you, and Chris for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
Pleasure is all ours. Before we get on to our topics for this week, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. We currently have 54 people watching. Thank you very much. And a special thank you to Elaine for already reposting the stream, anticipating what I was going to say. If you can please go ahead and repost the stream on X, we'd appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, we'd appreciate it if you like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Clown World, for reposting a stream. It's good to see you here early. And also, a special request, if you guys can go ahead and follow us on Substack. We're really trying to grow our audience on Substack because it allows for direct marketing. So every time we have an episode, we can push it out to you via email, and we don't have to deal with that pesky suppression algorithm. Now, today we're going to be tackling two topics. The first one will be this MOU involving Premier Danielle Smith. And the second one generally will be climate change, man-made climate change, and how much exactly it is man-made. So I'm going to throw it over to you, JP. You get us started with the MOU, and then we'll go Andre and then me.
I've been watching some of the discourse regarding the MOU, and it's really putting an emphasis on some of the division provincially in Alberta between the separatists and the more pro-Canada parts of the party. But when you look at what it is and the memorandum of understanding, it's not a binding document. It's essentially a tax agreement. And what's the reality of this document is they upped the carbon tax significantly. So I mean, the fact that Danielle Smith came out and decided to spin this as a win, and I find a lot of the cohorts, especially on social media, that are trying to push this as a win, it's seemingly out of absolute desperation. I just see this as, I mean, at this point, and it's going to get into our second topic, but I mean, anyone who's jumping on this green agenda with Carney is kind of showing you their hand right there. That's the whole agenda for where they're trying to transition Canada to. And the fact that she's so accepting of it kind of tells a lot of people everything they need to know. It certainly told me.
Go ahead, Andre. You're muted.
Sorry. If I may say, I think GP is right. You know, the concept of memorandum of understanding. When I was working at Hydro-Quebec in 2011, Hydro-Quebec made an offer to buy Energy New Brunswick. We were supposed to buy all the power plant, and we signed a memorandum of understanding, which is not a contract. And unfortunately, or fortunately for Hydro-Quebec, there was no deal because the power plant, the St. John power plant, was in really bad shape, and we understood that it was a bad deal. More recently, you had the memorandum, or you still have the memorandum of understanding between Newfoundland Hydro and Hydro-Quebec. And the new premier of Newfoundland, who is a conservative, said, we will review this memorandum of understanding. So it shows that you're not binded by this. It's not a contract. And I will refer to one thing that is important. JP mentioned the carbon tax. In Quebec, we have the Speedy, which is a carbon tax that they don't call carbon tax. And it is an agreement with California, with the state of Gavin Newsom. And according to the Parti Québécois, we are bound by this. And if we get out of this carbon tax deal, we will have a heavy penalty. This is not true. And when I look at Danielle Smith, and when I see how she will try to unite sovereignists and would say people who are advocating for the Canadian Federation, the unity of Canada. I think she's playing on both sides, trying to appease people. But I would say, classic politicians do. They always try to appease people, but it's a game. We know that there behind that you have the net zero agenda. I think in this memorandum of understanding, they were referring to it has to be net zero by 2050. How can a gas pipeline or oil pipeline can be net zero if you consider the idea of quote unquote fossil energy? It doesn't fit. And I think that the new policy of Canada will be in line with trying to keep the federation united. There will be no pipeline, for example, that will go through Quebec. So how can you have a pipeline from coast to coast that would benefit all Canadians? It is ludicrous. It's not something that will happen. Danielle Smith, she's stuck with a sovereignist movement that is growing for many reasons that I will not discuss. But I think she's trying to appease people because Albertans are starting to be very angry. They want to develop they develop their industry. And a lot of provinces are beneficiating from this, like Quebec, and they don't pay their fair share. So I think it's only a political game, like GP mentioned, and I think she will lose a lot of credibility with this type of memorandum. That does not bind the province of Alberta.
So my view on this is, and full disclosure, I don't know the details of this MOU. I haven't read it or anything. I haven't been able to look into it. But I don't think this has anything directly to do with the green agenda. I think it has to do with the polarization of the left and the right. So the country has drifted insanely towards the left over the last 50 years. This breakup of the family unit, all this Marxism, feminism, transgenderism now. And they've established a foothold, and they do not want to move. They don't want the Overton window to swing even 1 inch back towards the center, which in this case would be the right. So when Danielle Smith comes out and she signs an agreement, an MOU with Mark Carney, I don't think those people that are freaking out on the left right now, they know about as much about the MOU as I know, which is absolutely nothing. But they just know that Danielle Smith bad, orange woman bad sort of scenario. And they can't believe that Mark Carney signed an agreement with her. And then on the right, I think people are just so frustrated with what I just mentioned. Like everything is headed towards the left the last 50 years. And the right's like, no, we have to somehow bring this back to the center at the very least, which is sort of what Donald Trump represents. So then the right is probably not interested in what's in the MOU. Maybe a little bit more. They realize that the carbon tax is going to go up. But now they're upset. They're like, why would we side with this traitor that got parachuted into Ottawa? There is no winning with these people. The only way forward is to go independent in Alberta. And then a perfect example of this would be Guilbeault, which if we're to believe that he resigned in protest over this, like somehow this is going to cause climate change, anthropomorphic global warming, ice caps are going to melt. I think he actually believes that. I think he also didn't really look into it. He's just upset that you have these two irreconcilable sides. You got the left and the right, and none of them want to negotiate with each other. JP?
Yeah, and it sets up more politicking. Like you've seen right away, one of the prerequisites for this pipeline advancing was David Eby agreeing to it. And I mean, so that sets him up to utilize that as his primary election campaign, to kind of weaponize the anti-pipeline sentiment amongst British Columbian voters and kind of use that to his advantage. And you've seen that right away. He was making a statement less than 24 hours after her keynote address. But I mean, to top it off, I think it's showing the same kind of political thinking from the electorate that we're seeing in federal politics. It's that fear machine. It's like, well, we have to continue to support Danielle Smith because if not, the NDP is going to get in. So it's the same thing. It's a very similar dynamic to what we see in federal politics, almost like the don't split the vote. So in other words, don't criticize your leaders, don't criticize your public servants because the other guy might get in. And that kind of fear motivation is what keeps us in this perpetual stagnation that we're seeing in Canadian politics. And it's kind of perpetuating the status quo.
Go ahead, Andre.
It's interesting, if I, criticizing the elite or criticizing the public servant in Quebec, the prime minister is falling in the polls. He's at about now 15%, and he will lose not only the majority, he will maybe wiped out from the National Assembly as a official party. And they're trying to now he's shifting 180 degrees toward a pipeline in Quebec, and the leader of the bloc on the federal scene is saying, no, we will never have a pipeline in Quebec. So you have a dichotomy between the provincial government and the actual opposition in Ottawa, which is formed by the bloc, not the first opposition, and I think that it's always the same modus operandi. Do not criticize the elite. The elite knows better than you. Danielle Smith, she's the primer of Canada. She is or was the most popular prime minister in Canada, actually, if you go in the polls. But she's losing ground, like many politicians. Doug Ford. We talked many weeks ago about Tim Houston in Nova Scotia. All those people, they are part of what we call the elite or the higher class, and we cannot criticize them. So she had to play a game with Carney, make sure that we have this Canadian unity. I will not say elbows up because it's quite the metaphor is quite used now. The T-shirt are completely ripped from the elbow, but we see it's collapsing. What happened with the steel industry in Ontario? Algoma Steel will lay off 1,000 workers. It's the orange man in the other way with his tariff. No, it's not. It's not. It's 15 years and maybe more of a liberal agenda. I will just 2 words on Guilbeault. Guilbeault was arrested. I think it was in 2000, and he was practically put in jail because at the time he was working for Greenpeace, and then he became a minister in the cabinet of Trudeau. You can see how those people, they can betray their ideology. He's a zealot. He's a climate zealot. He's a climate fanatic, and he cannot accept any debate like most liberal. They just want to push an agenda. And like you said, Payman, you cannot move 1 inch from the left to the center. They will not. They will go down the drain with the water because the climate oath is collapsing.
No, I agree with that. I want to pick up on 2 things. One of the things, JP, you were talking about, like sort of the don't split the vote. The benefit of that argument, so you have 2 parties and you say, get behind your team, don't split the vote. The only thing the elites have to do, if they want you to vote for one candidate, they just have to put an even worse candidate in on the other side, and then people will pick the lesser of 2 evils. So that's another issue with not splitting the vote. I'm looking at the political landscape and the attacks against let's call it the right wing, but the conservative movement in Canada. So in BC, you have one BC, and there's calls to have both those MLAs recalled. And then in Alberta, there's a campaign on to remove 14 MLAs. So have 14 UCP MLAs recalled. And on social media, I see a vicious assault against the federal Conservative Party. And my inclination is, or my thinking is that the left is panicking, and they're throwing whatever money they have in their war chest at these 3 campaigns to try to discredit these people, discriminate them, prevent them from winning again, because I guess they don't want the Overton window to shift it back to the center. JP. Wait, before I hand it back to you, if I could get everybody to share the stream, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead.
Good job. I agree with the sentiment, but I would just phrase it a little differently. It's not the left that is desperate; it's the establishment. And one of the things they're very desperate is for us to stop framing it in terms of left and right and just looking at the integrity of the institutions. That's a frequent sentiment I convey. But to bring it back to Danielle Smith, she had the contradiction of the year, and I believe I've heard her say this before. But it's a line where she said she supports an independent Alberta within a united Canada. So, I mean, that's just a total contradiction. What does that mean? That's her literally in one line trying to keep everyone happy. It's like she says that independent Alberta, but if it's in a united Canada, it's kind of absurd. But I'd like to nominate her for the contradiction of the year. But to touch on some of the anthropogenic climate change, not to entirely switch it, but there's been a plethora of well-credentialed academics and scientists that have debunked this in different ways. Now, I always cite this, but I never provide the list. Now, I have it written down here. Here's just a few to get people started if they want to look these individuals up. Ann Plimer, Judith Curry, William Happer, Richard Lindzen, Patrick Moore, Bjorn Longberg, Stephen Koonin, Willie Soon, Gregory Reithstone, Greg Braden, and Alex Epstein. And there's many more. So it's not like the whole premise, it's all predicated on this concept of man-made climate change. And yet in the realm of science, this is immensely controversial presently. It's not accepted. That's just not true. There's not some kind of consensus regarding this. There's sincerely not. So, I mean, for them to utilize that to then transition our economy and our taxation towards this, which is very fallacious, it's just shocking to me. It truly is. What it is, in my estimation, and this is my own speculation on it, but it's a deindustrialization scheme. They want the degrowth and the deindustrialization of Western economies. And I mean, we can then kind of speculate further why they would want that, but that's just seemingly the end. There's cause and effect. And if you implement these policies presently, it's going to degrow our economy. Now they could say, oh, but we're going to do carbon capture and green technology. That's just not there. For energy density like wind and all of these other alternative green energies, the technology isn't there to replace the network. So I mean, it's kind of shocking to me. And what I find is people they stay surface level on it. It's just everything's an appeal to your emotion. Like you were mentioning, Andre, the way liberals generally argue is that's what it is. It's just everything is an appeal to emotion. You're not then allowed to criticize their position, or you're admonished with ad hominem. And that's the tactic, but we get nowhere, and then it fuels that division. But I think pragmatically moving forward, and this is a common theme of mine, I think we have to stop framing it in the left and the right and think of it as the people and the establishment. Because our institutions, our public servants are seemingly an insulatory layer between the people and the true ruling class, which is an oligarchy, at least in the Commonwealth countries, for sure. And I mean, what their primary function is to provide us with this illusion of participatory governance. Like we're all arguing with each other. We're all like as if it actually matters. And I guess you could say that's kind of cynical, but I think it's more realistic. I think, and I still attest to this fact, that the most important discussions regarding the citizens of the Western democracies and the Commonwealth countries are happening in rooms far away from the public view by individuals we likely wouldn't even recognize. What we're watching is a performative charade.
Andre, thoughts?
Well, I like what JP said about Danielle Smith, and giving her an award. Modern politicians are living oxymoron. They can speak, they can say something in one sentence and say the total opposite. Let's not forget, when you have a development like gas or oil pipeline, it takes years to implement this. You need the project analysis, you need cost benefit assessment, market studies, topographic surveys. You need to build multiple scenarios. You cannot just say, okay, we will build a pipeline here and that's it. You need social acceptability. And the phase of construction, it is 5 to 10 years, and sometimes even more. So a memorandum of understanding, it's just a way to appease people and the dissension that we have in Canada, actually. When you look at all the discourse of politicians, it is shifting slowly toward the center, no matter what they like it or not. It is shifting. GP mentioned all those scientists and the concept of consensus. Borg, I forgot his name, but I follow him since many years. Patrick Moore. There's a lot of people who were repressed, who could not express themselves in a rational debate about the concept or the hoax, I will use it, the hoax of climate change. Climate is changing, but is it man-made? The answer is no. And people should be aware that we should not mix environment with climate, or we should not mix weather system with climate. Those are three different concepts. And I see that politicians, they are not expert in nothing. Not only that, but they do not invite expert to advise them. I would be in a position of power. I would surround myself with a lot of scientists, and they could have a very hard debate on whether or not we are in a climate crisis. Many scientists, they proved the opposite. And maybe we will talk later about climate change and about the concept of consensus, because I think in a way people don't understand how science works. And we are not in a situation in Canada to develop our natural resources. GP is right. Deindustrialization will mean degrowth, and it will mean either depopulation of the Western country, and it will be replaced, or people will be replaced by immigration that will be more easy to manipulate. Most people, they arrive here, they just want jobs, even if it is cheap labor, and this is where we're going. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is we have to look internationally. Do you see Russia deindustrializing? Do you see Iran deindustrialization, deindustrializing its energy, its economy? Do you see China? This, you cannot even compare Canada with China. And I don't want to talk about United States. It's something different. But towards shale gas, United States is bankrupt since 2010. They cannot sustain the level of consumption in United States. So on the concept of energy, the degrowth means empowering the population. It's not very complicated. You will have less and less and less, and it's aligned with the agenda, let's say 2030 of the United Nations.
So we're right on track to transition. Well, we've kind of transitioned already to the climate change portion. If I could also ask, we got about 200 viewers. Let's try to see if we can break 1,000 before the end of the episode. And if you have a question, I'll just remind you guys, put it in the comment section, and we promise to get to it the last half of the show. We answer audience questions. I want to address this climate change thing from a different perspective. Not science, not even the climate. Sort of the erosion, the cultural erosion in the West. I had a guest on my podcast, I forget his name, but he was talking about the transition of education in Canada, higher education, universities, from being dominated by principally the religious institutions, and they would teach the Bible, but they would also teach the classics, to what it's become now. Like it was slow and steady at first, but now it's completely been taken over by the state, and they're teaching the humanities and transgender studies and whatnot. I mean, if you even teach people history, like look at the Roman Empire. Like one of the reasons it fell was because there was massive global warming. Like the temperature just changed. Look at the American Revolution. Like one of the reasons they couldn't take over Canada was because it was just so cold back there. Like if you have a functioning culture, if you have functioning institutions like churches, and especially if you have a functioning institution like the family, where your great grandfather would tell you, you know, when I was younger, it was this much warmer or colder, you get a sense that temperature changes. And Andre, you're right, temperature and climate are different, but you get a sense that the climate, the temperature at any given time, it changes. But because we don't have that culture in the West, and because we hand the children over to the state where the state brainwashes the children, climate change alarmism, essentially what it says is where I'm standing right now, 100 years ago at the same spot, at the same time of the day, same time of the year, the temperature and pressure should have been exactly the same as it is today. And if it's not, then it's man-made climate change. JP.
Yeah, it's very inaccurate. I agree with what you're saying, and furthermore, it's utilized now almost like an orthodoxy. Like people will invoke this climate science to shut down discourse, not to participate in discourse, right? And I think we've been so conditioned. I've mentioned this a lot, but like in Canada especially, they've been pushing this not just through our school curriculums, and it's Malthusian based, which is premised on like we're going to run out of all the resources, so we need to control the population. It's very fallacious. Malthus didn't account for human ingenuity in his calculations for sure, but I mean that's what it's premised on. So Malthusian is synonymous with an anti-human sentiment, and once you're already in the secular realm now, so forget about God, who was always the centralized unifying ethic, and it went down to man, but now we're worshiping nature in some very real sense. I mean, we're there's young people now that are choosing not to have families because of this premise of man-made climate change. They think it's greedy of them to do their function as being people is to procreate, and they're saying we don't want to do it because we don't want to, you know, use all the resources. We don't want to pollute the environment. So we're quite literally sacrificing to Gaia in some sense. I know it's indirect, but that's really how I see it. And the way we're shifting, and it's so accepted. Like I remember a cartoon. Now I've cited this plenty of times to Payman. He knows exactly where I'm going, but it was called Captain Planet. And I'm 42 years old. When I was a child, I would watch this show. So I'm talking 6, 7 years old. And Captain Planet was a superhero, and it had all the narratives in it. And the premise of this show was to vilify industry. All of the bad guys, all of the antagonists of this show were like roughnecks or businessmen or oil guys. And then all of the heroes were these pseudo-moralistic, pseudo-rebellious teenagers, and very multicultural group too, suspiciously so. So, I mean, we had this right from our get-go. As I'm 40 years old, and I'd say it was going on since the 80s. But I mean, it's ingrained into our culture, and people don't just accept it. They have a true belief in it, like a belief that people used to have faith in God or in their religion. Now they have faith in this science, and science isn't something to have faith in. It's not a rigid orthodoxy that can be cited to shut down discourse. It's a process. It's an ever evolving process that's constantly changing with the introduction of new evidence. So, I mean, it's just, I find we're going in such a bad direction in this country. And I don't think people see it that way, but I truly do. It's again, it's a reference to the godless secular nature of modernity.
So, Andre, what are your thoughts on Captain America?
Well, Captain America, but Gaia too. I think JP is right because the propaganda is quite old. I'm older than both of you, gentlemen. I'm 65. I will be 66 soon, and he's right. It started around 1980. You know, the first accord, the first agreement was the Kyoto Accord in 1995, and they were pushing the agenda. You know, the graph, you know, the hockey stick graph with the correlation between the CO2, the carbon dioxide, and the temperature was pushed in 1987, and then after that you had the IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change, that was supposed to be a group of scientists. Those people are diplomats. They're not scientists. They're diplomats named by countries, essentially Western countries, and they produce a document every 2 or 3 years. And this document is made out of studies, hundreds of studies, without any executive summary for leaders. You cannot have a correlation. There's no table of content. The last document was produced in 2022. I downloaded. I read a big part of it. It is about 3,000 pages of studies that are correlated. And I would say, when I say correlated, they aggregate data to fit their narrative. It is not about I will observe the correlation between temperature and the level of the carbon dioxide. No, I take the data, I aggregate them so they will fit my narrative, my ideology, and I challenge everybody to go and download this document and bring me a study that will conclude or that will prove that there is a man-made climate change. It does not exist. What you mentioned, Payment, is true. Climate is always changing. It's a giant system. And there's a scientist, I forgot his name, but he was studying the green gas effect. He says, on the level of the planet, the green gas does not exist. It cannot, because you have a lot of layers in the atmosphere. And you have another thing that is quite funny. Many farmers in their greenhouse, they put carbon dioxide generator to help their plants grow. You can imagine this. You would go to see a farm and say, you're not allowed to put a carbon dioxide generator. Carbon dioxide is life. And the narrative there is so embedded in the mind of people, especially younger generation, that they, like JP mentioned, it is part of their identity. It's practically a religion, and science is not a religion. JP mentioned it. It is a process, and it's not built on consensus. It's built on dissensus. I would advise people to read a small book. It was written in 1987. The title is "What is this thing called science?" And he's describing, Karl Popper is describing all the concept of science. And there was a concept that is very interesting. It is falsificationism, how you can falsificate a theory. I will give a simple example. You have a championship boxer. He's the world champion, and he has challenger. And if he's starting to age, he's 35, he cannot fight anymore, but he still has his title, and he will try to avoid challenger because he's afraid to lose. A real champion will accept to be challenged all the time. If you have a theory, you expect your peers that they will challenge your theory, so your theory will become more strong. That's a concept that is in this little book. I advise people to read this. It's not very long, and it enlightens what JP mentioned, the process of science. Young generation, they are brainwashed, and they don't want to change their behavior for many reasons. Not having children, saving the planet. It's a nihilistic behavior, in my opinion.
So one more time, I'd just like to stress we really need you guys to restream this live stream so that we can get our message out. If you could do that, we would appreciate that. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'll do a couple more rounds and then we'll get to them. I almost describe our form of government, our form of life in the West, like a runaway train or like a Frankenstein monster. And maybe the elites in power, maybe they have some idea of where they want to go, but at the same time, it's taken on a life of its own. I'll give you one example. We have a society that believes that some nerd virgin guy in a university somewhere doing research can grow the food supply better than a farmer that does this for a living. Another one is carbon capture. That's the dumbest thing ever. Like what I've been spending the last week trying to think of something that's even dumber than taking carbon out of the atmosphere. I've come up with like vacuuming the desert, or maybe like shoveling the ocean. Like you shovel all day and nothing's going to change. But it's just, I'm not coming at it from the science perspective. I've looked at the science of climate change. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm coming at it from the cultural perspective. I'll wrap up with this final example. The urban centers, I grew up in these big dense cities. you come into the city and you just assume it was there from time immemorial. Like Adam and Eve, they come out of the garden and there it is, Greater Vancouver area. Well, it used to be a forest, and then somebody came and built it up, and they built it up and they built it up. They killed all the local animal population. They got rid of all the mosquitoes. You got the water supply, and now you don't have to worry about critters running around your backyard. You can go do hot yoga. If you're a soccer mom, you can worry on making your ass look nice in Lululemon. But then they do this thing where they pull the ladder up behind them when they say no one else is allowed to do that. You, Farmer Joe, you're not allowed to cut down a tree on your property because you're destroying the environment. These guys destroyed the environment. They created this concrete jungle, and then they're denying that to other people to do, which ties into this biodiversity treaty and coastal corridors. Sorry for taking so long, JP. Go ahead.
Oh, that was good, man. It's funny. We have a process for carbon capture. It's called photosynthesis. I mean, it actually greens the world. I agree. Carbon is the gas of life. There's lots of the scientists I've cited that have made that part of their premise in debunking this. But just touching on what Andre was saying, it's like in academia there, starting probably about 10 years ago, there was the replication crisis, where so many of these studies that were peer-reviewed and approved could not be replicated when they were trying to rerun them. And a lot of this was in different realms. In every realm was touched by this crisis, but especially in some of the pharmaceutical mental health drugs, like regarding SSRIs and all of these type drugs. Now, numbers can be presented in very subjective ways. Like you could take one data set, and if you're a skilled rhetorician, and rhetoric plays into this, you could present that same data set and make various points. And the numbers add an air of just certitude to it. So when you have numbers to back it up, it makes people that are listening just think yes. So I mean, there's definitely kind of a more of a malleable thing with some of these studies than we would think. But Canada is not very densely populated. So any carbon that we are putting out, we are naturally taking care of with that process. I sincerely mean that. So if we're going to implement this international system, if this goes international, I think the other countries owe us some money because we're carbon capturing them with all of our forests presently. I'm deadly serious too. That's kind of using their own premise. Everything Canada puts out and then some is absorbed by our forests.
Go ahead, Andre.
Well, that's a good point. Carbon capture. I will go more far. I do not use their narrative. For me, carbon capture is absurd. It's not something that I will use because, like you mentioned, why we capture carbon. Carbon dioxide is life, and the only way you can grow food is to have carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not a green gas. It's something that is necessary to life. If you go with Malthus, you understand the eugenist part behind that. This is more deep philosophy since the Club of Rome in 1972, and when they started to impose this ideology of we're too many people on the planet. When you look at Canada, 41 million people, the territory is so vast and we have so much resources. I can compare this to Russia. Russia, it is the biggest country on the planet in terms of geography and territory, and they are only 141 million people. So when you look at the size of Canada, it's a very big country and it's a very wealthy country with natural resources. Why we are targeting this net zero idea or using this net zero ideology? It is because of degrowth. We want to reduce the size of the economy. If you have an economy that is too powerful, you will grow and people will become more wealthy, more educated. And what will happen? Why in 1945, let's say 1950, close to the death of Stalin, the government in the Soviet Union started to slow down in the education. People were getting more and more educated and cultured, and they were starting to challenge the government. What you have when you have an educated and cultured population, they will challenge the elite, and they will ask hard questions. Because we have alternative media and we have many ways to find the information, you have maybe 5-10% of the population who is aware of what is coming and what is going on, and they're asking hard questions. And the elite doesn't want to answer those questions. Just take Al Gore. Al Gore, who was running for presidency in the United States, he became billionaire with this ideology of climate change. And every time, last week, 2 weeks ago, they were in Brazil with their private jet. It is so parody. It's quite fascinating. You see a clown show, and people, they don't react. It's because they are completely hypnotized by the ideology, and this is difficult to break.
I'm a simple man, I hear the word clown show and I agree. I think that's a valid description of Canada right now. Just something really quick. I do agree. It is a deindustrialization agenda. Maybe they don't want Canada to develop its natural resources and start a manufacturing sector. I always go back to the family unit. I say the family unit is a decentralized form of governance, and the state is a centralized form of governance. So they oppose it. And I think you could extend that to property rights. So Andre Meloche, if you have an acreage, they don't want you to cut down that tree. They want the government to give you that permission to cut down the tree. And this green agenda gives them that. JP, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to go curate the comments. I'll pick out the good ones. You two can discuss. And again, if everybody could share the space, the stream, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this at the core of it, and where we've been touching on the fact that people accept this, they don't question it, and on top of that, it's kind of illustrative of a deeper problem, and this is this technocratic sentiment. Like, people don't want anyone to do their own research. Everyone should just bow down to the experts, these technocrats, and that's being normalized. Like, right away, there's people that'll make that argument. It's like, if you have an opinion in any realm, they'll ask you right away, well, what's your education in that? And I mean, it's not that that's not relevant, but I mean, they use it as a way to shut down discourse. I don't like that. And that's one of the scarier aspects of it. That's what we've seen in the Soviet Union. Soviet just being a word for council. You have a council of technocratic experts, and they make the decisions. And that's where Canada is headed. And that's where a lot of these people are comfortable with that. I think anyone who's more liberty-minded, that terrifies us. But the technocracy aspect behind this, and people's almost like the normalization of just going along with the narrative. Like, we're to the point now where if anyone has a critical analysis, we admonish them by calling them a conspiracy theorist, utilizing that term as a pejorative, as an admonishment. It's kind of phenomenal.
And GP, you mentioned the word expert. Okay, now I will pretend to be an expert because I worked 23 years in the energy sector with Hydro-Quebec, and I will just give some small detail about what we call renewable energy. That does not exist. There's always a footprint. We call now they use the idea of carbon footprint. You even see this now on package when you buy something in supermarket. They start to have this in the UK. Renewable energy does not exist. Windmill, for example, the amount of concrete you need to support the base. Concrete is supposed to destroy environment. Wow, I'm surprised. The blades are not cannot be recycled. You need oil to lubricate the moving components, and you need the generator powered by diesel to start the windmill, the wind turbine. Those turbines, they do not operate below minus 15 degrees. The production of energy is intermittent. It is energy, it is not power. The lifespan of a windmill is 20 years, and the utility factor, the amount of time that you can use, it's about 20%. About solar panel, making a photovoltaic solar panel requires silica and an industrial process using high heat. and you need power. You cannot just have energy. And the lifespan of a 15-year-old of a solar panel is 15-year-old, and you cannot recycle them. The other thing is fossil fuel, this expression. You have a lot of scientists who will talk about abiotic oil, and they will challenge the narrative or the pseudo consensus about fossil energy. How come, for example, they would build a pipeline, a gas pipeline, which is supposed to be a green gas? It's a contradiction, and they always play on this because most people, like you said, they want to shut you down. They will say, oh, what's your expertise? Well, come and ask me, because I do have expertise in energy. I've studied grid for about 20 years. I was a manager, and I was even a business trader, trading energy, trading power, trading. And I saw this long-term tendency in the Western world where you try to impoverish people. There's no such thing as business in Canada anymore. It's great corporation. And let's not forget, in Alberta, all those gas and oil company, they have stakeholders. They will not take risk. And I think if we go back to Danielle Smith and Mark Carney, they wanted to reassure the industry. But for what purpose? If we are going to be downsizing the economy, I don't know.
Do you want to respond to that, JP?
Yeah, just quickly. I think it's a good thing to mention too, and I'm ashamed that I didn't, is a lot of these studies are funded by these industries. I was thinking of it as you mentioned the term fossil fuels. Now, I didn't vet this. This is kind of conjecture. It's something I read somewhere, but that it was Rockefeller and Standard Oil that paid for a bunch of scientists to then add that kind of clarifying term fossil fuel to petroleum, like as if to indicate that it's more scarce than it was. Potentially, that's kind of the conspiracy around it. But
it is not.
Yeah, and that's Willie Soon, one of the scientists I mentioned, said it can't be fossil fuels because they use some kind of light spectrum analysis to look at various planets in our solar system, and they can indicate that there's fossil fuels present on some of these moons, which is fascinating and kind of throws a wrench in the whole thesis.
Exactly. And, you talk about Rockefeller and, this expression.
Sorry, we should get to the questions.
I think it's important because people, they always think that we live in scarcity. We do not live in scarcity. We do not. And that's what they want you to believe, because after that, they can say, okay, you will have to save energy. You will have to be careful. No, it's not true. Not at all. Mankind is very rich, but we know the socialist agenda behind that.
One thing, Payman, I know you're getting frustrated, but it's such a pertinent quote. Aldous Huxley said, "When the doors of perception are cleansed, everything will appear to man as it truly is, in its infinite." And I just thought that was fitting. Go ahead. We're good for the questions.
All right. So we got a lot of questions. We'll see how many we can get through. There's more coming in as well. Gentlemen, I'll read the question. I'll answer them first, since I've got my response already figured out. So the first one is from True West. He says it's a two-part question. Cheap energy is one of the primary reasons for worldwide improvement in standard of living and productivity. This enables power to the people. The elite want to suppress this trend. Like this I keep hammering away at the cultural aspect. We live in these urban centers. To us, energy comes out of the electric socket. We don't know what goes on behind there. But like I'm on a farm right now. If you live anywhere else where you're not in the urban center, fuel has a different meaning. When I was traveling across Canada to get to the trucker convoy, fuel didn't just mean your cell phone or electricity energy. It means you're not going to freeze to death. And if the price of energy goes up, you feel that. But people have been dumbed down, so they don't. Go ahead, JP.
Yeah, it's a great point. And one of the things they're doing with the carbon taxation is they want the population to gradually acclimate to a lesser quality of life. They want us to gradually acclimate. Oh, well, guess what, honey? This year we can't afford to take a vacation. And then next year, oh, we can't afford to heat this whole house, so we're going to only heat a couple rooms in the winter. Like it's going to get that bad. And it never ends. Because again, the premise of it is very anti-human. It's a degrowth premise behind it all. But that's an excellent point. And cheap energy would save the world. Cheap energy would develop underdeveloped parts of the world, and I think we could provide that. And I think we have a human obligation to provide that from just a moral standpoint. Now, I'm pro-human, more so than pro-environment. I think a lot of that is just a narrative that we were sold.
Andre?
You're right. Energy is progress, and I will just refer to Iran. There was an economist who said Iran should be able to have nuclear energy, civil nuclear energy, because it is progress. And the fact that we live in scarcity, you mentioned it, JP. This year we will not eat this room, we will not take vacation. The carbon footprint, they are acclimating us toward scarcity. And it's so incredible to see how people fall for it. It's like the frog in a pan, in a boiling pan. You slowly boil them, and I see it. And 80% of the population will fall for it, especially the young generation, until they will start to freeze. I was saying it's very simple. When it will be minus 25 in your house in January, and it will be minus 25 outside, you will go outside because you will have barrel of people who will be in barricades and they will challenge the government. This is how insurrection starts. When you have nothing more to lose, you start to act. And I think we're not far from that, but we still have to suffer. We still have to suffer so people can awake.
Another comment from True West, CO2 is life. Life on Earth is carbon-based. Matt, brother, I hear you, and it's almost impressive that they've managed to convince people that carbon dioxide is bad, given that high school should have taught them about photosynthesis. JP?
Yeah, 100%. I remember in my high school we did experiments where we gave CO2 to plants that were dying, and they would come back to life. Like, you know what I mean? There's statistics too. Bjorn Longberg, one of the gentlemen I referenced, he did statistics that say we've greened. There's far more trees than there were in North America. There's a lot of things that kind of kill this narrative, and it's suppressed. This information is very much suppressed, just like all of those academics and scientists I mentioned have been suppressed, because they're challenging this kind of synthetic consensus. And this consensus is totally important to these globalists. These international oligarchs, everything they're doing is predicated on that. That's why they're so protective of it. I have a small TikTok account where I trim some of my videos and my interviews, and I put it up there. And I don't get much. I'm very suppressed on that algorithm as well. But all of my videos will have like 300 views. And if I mention climate change, it'll have 3 views. So like anything, you just can't challenge that. It's a sacred horse. It's sacred to this ruling class, because that's what they want to use as a premise to subjugate us.
Okay.
Well, I will refer to Ouroboros, this snake who hits his tail. Actually, the ideology is, I would say, collapsing, and they are afraid because more and more people they are impacted by this fake scarcity. Yes, CO2 is life. As 0.04% of the gas is CO2, carbon dioxide. You can Google it still today, until we have a digital ID. But you can try, and yes, it is life. I do agree with the True West.
Yeah, that 0.04 thing really gets me. The next question is from Granddaddy-O. MOU means nothing. Mr. Meloche is correct. The MOU is a pressure relief valve meant to pacify discontent within the population. Maybe I'll hand it over to you guys. I think our politics there is no rhyme or reason to our politics. There's no logic. It's fully governed by emotion, and people are hyper emotional right now. JP?
I think it's governed by this oligarchical class. And I think they made Danielle Smith come out and say the industrial carbon tax was going up. So she was like, look, guys, I need a win here somewhere. So a lot of these other things, they dressed it up so she could come out and endeavor to pass this off as a win. I think Granddaddy-O is spot on. The pressure relief valve to kind of kind of satiate some of the more hardliners, and then to still kind of appeal to the pro Canada ones, right? And again, it's just the nature of politics right now. They got to appeal. There's all this division, and she's kind of forced just by the nature of it to endeavor to appeal to both sides. And that's where you get such a contradiction of a sentiment as I'm for an independent Alberta in a unified Canada, which is just absurd.
Audrey?
Yes, well, it's interesting because you mentioned this absurdity. 1965, we had Daniel Johnson in Quebec, and he had the text. It was a memorandum that he presented. The text was equality or independence, a sovereign nation in a federation. It's exactly the same stratagem that is used to undermine the sovereignist movement in Alberta. I just hope that Albertans or Alberta people will not fall for it. Danielle Smith is not there to free people. She's there to maintain the actual consensus, business as usual. Stay in the Canada. We will give you something, but and we will give you MOU. I think Granddaddy you mentioned it. It means nothing. It means nothing.
All right, we got a question from Unacceptable, the new Laura Lee. Lawyers lobbied against life to get more power for corporations. Which person stood up for life in the courts? I don't know if you mean life, like life in conception, or just generally speaking, but I think you mean generally. I take this back to the breakup of the family unit and the destruction of Christianity in the West, but just religion in general. And then bureaucracy stepped in, and lawyers have just been they've been running roughshod because they bill hourly, so they're destroying everything. JP?
Yeah, I think too. Like along the way, Canadians, anyone in a democratic system has an obligation to be informed and to actually watch what the political class is doing. And since the 1960s in Canada, the corporations have been getting all the power. Then what we've seen with some of the free trade agreements, some of these corporations and larger hedge fund groups like BlackRock and State Street and all these, they just have more power than most nations. And I mean, like I said, it's kind of just we're seeing the extent of how corrupt everything is now. It's like I use this analogy. All of the chaos domestically and geopolitically presently is providing us with a rare glimpse behind the curtain. Because, I mean, I'll tell you, I was blown away because it was only within the last year or so that I truly realized that politics is the bread and circuses of modernity. That like politics is there just to keep us all distracted and to provide this illusion of participatory governance while the corporate class or the oligarchical class does whatever they want and pushes us into whatever future, dystopian future they have in mind.
Sorry, Andre, go ahead.
Well, you're right. You talk about the dystopian future. I've been aware of something that was going on since maybe 25 years, but I could not put names on it. I was in the energy domain, and I was still believing that nuclear is bad, especially after the earthquake in Japan in 2011. And I was floating a little bit to answer the question: which person stood up for life in the court? Let's say the last 5 years, we still have Tamara Lish, Chris Barber, but you still have what I call the first quarter of the 21st century, what I call the era of the whistleblower. You had Snowden, you had Assange, who was put in jail for practically 7 years in the embassy in Ecuador embassy in London. Those people were punished because the corporation does not allow a democratic process. We do not live under a democratic society, and we do have people who paid a very, very heavy price. I think about, for example, on the cultural side, Arthur Pawlowski. They were put in jail. He was put in jail. He was accused, but he stood up. You still have great people who can inspire other people.
No, well put. Andre, the next question is for you. Clown World says, Andre, you don't look a day over 64. Uncle Ray says, Clown World, it's because his wife keeps him young.
It's a question or a statement?
I don't know. You want to tell Uncle Ray to stay out of your personal life? It's up to you.
No, but I love it. I love his hat and his sweater. Fuck
Oh,
Carney.
I didn't notice that. Yeah,
It's a variant of fuck Trudeau.
oh yeah. Okay, I guess we're gonna get deboosted now. That's my bad.
That's-
Next question. Canada first. Depopulation is the name of the game. The climate scam is just one of the ways they are using to excuse their defunding of the citizens for the purpose of controlling the remaining people. Yeah, I'll let you guys talk about the depopulation thing. I just take this back to Andre. You mentioned in the 90s, in the 80s it started, but I think it was in the 70s with the ozone layer, the hole in the ozone layer. Pierre Trudeau picked that up. He ran with it, and I think that was the first test case. And they're like, "Guys, we really have something
Yes.
here." And then they went hard. JP.
Well, it was global cooling. I remember a documentary that came out in the super early 80s with Leonard Nimoy. They actually broke Spock out for this one. And they were talking about this potential future where the globe was going to cool, like temperatures were going to get lower. And everyone was going to be, it was like a new ice age was coming. And then I remember the hole in the ozone, it was everyone using hairspray that made a hole in the ozone layer. And now the globe it's the greenhouse gases are causing a warming trend. So we got global warming. But now all of those were disproved with the accumulation of new data. And now they just call it climate change because you can't really do much about that because climate changes. So it's hard to like prove it wrong based on that. It's a more tricky term for them to use. But I'm with Canada First. I believe this is a scam. I believe the premise is for the degrowth and the deindustrialization of Western economies. I could speculate as to why. I would guess why is they want to usher us into some form of totalitarian governance.
Andre?
I think you're right, and if you put the main goal as the population, and I would advise to people to do a simple task. You take the Maslow pyramid, and the pyramid of needs. You need food, shelter. Then after that, you need to build a family. Then you want to fulfill your greater goals, and you arrive at the top. And the being. The idea is to disconnect ourselves from our true self. That's the first thing. And if you put the population at the top of the pyramid and you start to put all the dots, let's say war, climate change, the pseudo pandemic, you can understand that they are all related because they always use the same type of narrative to convince people. It's always by fear, scarcity, and greed. You're greedy if you have children. You're greedy if you have a house. I'm sorry. Breathing, water, a shelter. Those are human beings. It's necessary for life. And if they convince you that you have too much, they will push the depopulation agenda. I think Canada is right.
Sorry if it looked like I wasn't paying attention. I was just looking for more questions. Here's one from Canada First. Don't heat the world, but let's build data centers everywhere. I find people, they can compartmentalize these things, and it's never a contradiction with them. And if you call them out for it, they'll disagree with you. And this is a perfect example. These data centers are going to use so much power. It's like, no, let's get rid of nuclear. Let's get rid of oil. We're going to have windmill. All right, fine, man. You need like 1 billion windmills for one chat GPT. Go ahead, JP.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's priorities. You know what I mean? Let's let the working class, let's let the plebs in the Western democracies just have a shitty life, never know what it's like to own a home, not be able to have a bunch of kids. Because one of the biggest factors preventing Western men from having children is the economy. I mean, exactly. If you can't own a home and you can't have fiscal security, it's kind of irresponsible to have a bunch of kids. I mean, that's one of the biggest factors. But yeah, it's again, it's one thing if you're going to use that as your ethos, like let's make things more equitable. We're all going to suffer together. But that's not what they're saying. They're saying there's going to be this elite class that are going to prioritize things based on their technical expertise, and evidently, AI is prioritized above the people. So I mean, yeah, it's just telling, man. I believe that we're truly under the control of an international oligarchical class, and I think what we're seeing is them fighting with one another. I think they've factionalized, and we're watching them fight with each other. I know I took that in a very weird direction, but that's just where my mind went.
Go ahead, Andre.
Well, he's right. It's a patchwork. You have a lot of events, and I think we have a duty to connect the dots together. To say to people, don't necessarily think that it is related, but think about it. Think about how it is related. How come you will have those huge data center if you don't want to use them to control people, to control in 2024 and 23, if I remember, in California, there was a big heat wave, and people, they have a smart thermostat, and they arrive from their work, and those thermostats, they're connected to the grid, and people were arriving in their houses, and they wanted to put, let's say, 24 degrees, which is not that cold, and they had message, no, the grid does not permit you to cool your house. Now they did the same thing in Quebec. We have huge data center here because you have Bitcoin mining. It's so absurd, so ludicrous that you arrive at one point and you say, wait a second, I will freeze. Like I said, minus 25. Either people will go out and do insurrection, or they will go and sleep next to a data center because it will generate heat.
Yeah, it's absurd. Andre, it seems like you're quite popular tonight. So the next question is also from you, and it's again from Uncle Ray. Question for Andre. Francois Legault, in lengthy interview yesterday, kept repeating that wind equals 6 cents per kilowatt hour, or 6 cents per kilowatt, hydro 10 cents, and nuclear 16 cents. Is it true? To me, it does not sound right at all.
No, it is not. It is not. Let's say you have the patrimonial energy in Quebec, 165 terawatt hour, which is about 85% of the consumption of Quebec. And the cost production is 2.9 cents. That's hydro. Today, we have the data for windmill. Windmill, it is still close to 15 cents per kilowatt hour. And solar is close to 20 cents. Nuclear is cheap, but we don't have nuclear anymore in Quebec, and practically no nuclear in Canada. You still have some in Ontario, but they are decommissioned. So they try to move to what they call renewable energy. No, it is false. The Prime Minister, Francois Legault, is lying all the time about energy. You can go and check the data or on the Hydro-Quebec website, or you have a lot of specialists in energy who will confirm what I'm saying. No, it is not true.
Do you want to add anything, JP?
No, that's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, same here. I don't know how any of that works. So let's go to something there's a two-part easy question. First from Clown World. Don't forget acid rain, JP, LOL. And then Granddaddy-O, yeah, it all started with an ice age that was coming. This is the other thing I say. People are just brain dead. Like, Montreal was under a mile of ice. It's like, I want to go to these people that believe in climate change. Like, you do realize that we had a mile of ice. Things changed. Get used to it, JP.
It's funny. I forgot about the acid rain. That was right up there with the killer bees, right? It's just fear. It's just fear. They want us to live in this world where it's scarcity and we're afraid, and we're easier to control that way. And I'm a firm believer that the only way they're getting away with this is by keeping us feuding with one another. I find it interesting. In 2008, there was the Tea Party on the right. Now I'm going into American politics, but there was the Tea Party on the right. And then there was the Occupy Wall Street movement on the left. And they both kind of arrived at a very startling conclusion in 2008. Like, oh my God, like, it's the systems. They're bailing out the banks. They're doing all this shit, and they're hurting the people. So what did you see after that? You seen all these culture war issues pushed to the forefront. There was transgender people in bathrooms. This woke thing started coming about. Why? Because that puts emphasis on the division. It puts emphasis on our natural proclivities to lean different ways. And that keeps the population looking at each other instead of like getting together and finding some solidarity. It's like, hey, I got more in common with even, I'll go as far as a transgender in a bathroom than I do with the elitists that are endeavoring to subjugate me in some kind of neo-feudalist system. I mean, that's just the truth of it. I'm not saying I'm what I'm saying is we should try to right now, if we were ever going to do this as humanity, we should put emphasis on what unites us, as opposed to putting emphasis on the multitude of things that presently divide us.
Andre?
Well, you're right, GP, but it's quite difficult because I would take just one phrase, queer or LGBTQ for Palestine. You can see that there's sometimes you see memes that are very funny. It says, okay, gay in Gaza, how it will end. There's a lot of people who are, I would say, useful idiot that are used as a weapon, and most people, they cannot recognize that. A lot of people, they cannot sustain a rational debate, and we're stuck in this. That's maybe why we have to try to inspire people to have a debate, but there's a lot of people who cannot.
I agree.
Yes, good point. The next one is from Canada First. This is a kind of an easy, lighter question. Solar and windmills destroy the land as well. Every few months, Elon Musk comes out and he reposts the same tweet. It's a picture of how much of the country has to be solar panels or windmills in order to power the whole country. And then somebody, it's like a state the size of Idaho or something, and somebody comes along and puts a next picture next to it. He goes, "This is how much you would need of the state if it was using oil and gas," and next to that, this is how much you would need if it was nuclear. And it becomes apparent that nuclear is just so much more efficient.
Well, what are we going to eat if all of the land is filled with solar and windmills, right? Like that's one of the big problems. But yeah, it's also so absurd, man. It truly is. It's what started to wake me up to it, and I'll reference this book because I was indoctrinated with this climate propaganda my whole life, and I was very hesitant when I started to see information that was questioning that. I was questioning it in myself. I thought, like, I don't know, it's so accepted. I can't be right. This is, I felt guilty for having skepticism. So I actually read a book called Apocalypse Never by Michael Schellenberger. And Michael Schellenberger was the perfect individual to have written this book because he wrote the book about his own process of realization. And he was a radical activist. He was a member of Greenpeace. And then slowly, he's a journalist now, and he's more centered. But I mean, he talked about all of his process in learning this. And I always, because it's one of the hard things when you're trying to wake people up to what's occurring and some of the manipulation that's occurring in our system, that the climate change one is the hardest one. They think you're crazy right away if you question that. And I think being able to point to certain books or reference material, it helps you immensely in your arguments if you do endeavor to wake people up.
Andre?
Well, he's right. It destroys the land. It makes me laugh because we talk about Elon Musk. In 2020, I changed the roof. I have a very old house, and I changed the roof, and I put a metal roof. And I was thinking about buying the solar panel roof from Tesla. They make solar panel roof. Of course, it's very nice here. In 1998, we had a high storm that lasted 12 days. 75% of the electrical transmission grid collapsed. There was a sector that you had practically 6 inches of ice everywhere. Do you think a roof like that would sustain this level of weather? 2023, the Tesla, what I call the Tesla cemetery in Alberta, it was minus 33 for practically 3 weeks. You had cars that were stuck on the highway. So when Elon Musk talks about future and renewable energy and solar panel, it's very funny because in California, maybe because you don't need 85% of you need in the northern energy needed in the northern country is heating system. So Elon Musk is a little bit of a lunatic, in my opinion.
All right, no love lost there. This is a funny comment from JT. Andre, you said queers for Palestine. JC says cows for steak.
Cows for steaks.
That's a good one. Let's see what else we got. We got a couple of random ones, but I just want to get rid of the climate change ones. Fierce Linus says acid rain, hole in the ozone layer, global warming, yada yada. David Suzuki, Bill Nye, BS. I was watching David Suzuki. He did a debate against somebody, and this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was just constant character assassination. So I don't really have much respect for that guy, JP.
Yeah, I agree, man. David Suzuki, just a shill. Same with Bill Nye or Neil Tyson deGrasse or Neil deGrasse Tyson, whatever his name is. It's like they're spokespeople for the accepted narratives, and their whole role is to kind of inundate people with these accepted narratives.
Andre?
Well, they're they're the puppet in front. We always attack Bill Gates, we always attack Al Gore, or we always attack those people who will take the mic and they will try to convince population. When you dig just a little bit, or just look in the back and you see the string of the puppeteers, you understand that they're there just to control the narrative and to discredit critical thinking.
So we got a couple of sort of random questions. The first one is from Uncle Ray, who says Canada equals Malthus with Carney. It's interesting how the Liberal Party, you could say that it was hijacked in the 60s and 70s by Pierre Trudeau and his Fabian socialism. But the people that support the Liberal Party because of their brand, they might not have noticed that for a few decades. And I would say up until now, when I talk to like the 85, 90-year-olds, they still think the Liberal Party is whatever it was in like the 50s and early 60s. JP?
Yeah, that speaks to the information level of our electorate. I frequently say they're not low information or even no information. They've been misinformed. And that's one of the biggest problems when it comes to endeavoring to educate them. When you try to tell them things, it's again, they're so programmed with these narratives and they have all these biases and they have this almost reflexive response to just call you crazy. It's like if you question any of their accepted presuppositions, you're crazy. And that's how it works. But Malthus with Carney, absolutely. And Malthus with all of the Commonwealth countries, you have to admit, there's a very similar set of circumstances. There's a very similar agenda being implemented in all the Commonwealth countries and the vast majority of the EU countries. Poland, Hungary, Italy has been able to resist a little bit, but this is an agenda. It's a top-down agenda. And Carney didn't come here. He didn't leave his coffin in Europe and travel back to this resource/labor colony to help the peasantry. He's here to implement the last phase of the agenda.
What do you think, Andre?
No, I think JP is right. And the comment of Uncle Ray, Malthus with Carney, of course. Malthusianism, and you mentioned the Fabian Society, they were all eugenists. They all believe, and they believe, this is maybe what is the most dangerous thing. They believe that they're doing something good for humanity. We are just a flock. And maybe to answer the question of GP, what we will eat, bugs.
That's it. Everyone thinks they won't eat the bugs, but wait till they haven't eaten for 2 weeks and someone comes with some cricket protein.
Most probably.
We're approaching the end of the episode. I should have done this more. If you guys could share the space, the stream, we'd appreciate it. Even after the show is finished, it still grows our numbers. I got a sort of a partisan question from Granddaddy-O. PPC is the only federal hope, or Milhouse, that's Pierre Poilievre, is replaced by somebody real. Other than that, stick a fork in it, boys. Show's over. I find it interesting that PPC has been pretty radio silent. Like that, I haven't heard much from them, and I honestly think that people keep shifting from hope to hope. And first they put their hope in Danielle Smith. Now it seems like they're putting their hope in Dallas Brody and 1BC. I don't know what's going to happen with the PPC. JP, what are your thoughts?
I've said this before and I stand by it. In order for me to trust any of our sitting members of parliament, they would have to break the fourth wall. Forget about their party loyalties. Forget about the agenda. Because I know I get the impression that all of our provincial governments and all of our sitting MPs are getting pep talks to kind of go along with what's happening. But one of them would need to break the fourth wall. Turn to the Canadian public and say, look, guys, you guys are getting fucked. this is not real. This is a performance, and you guys got to wake up. And he's probably be dragged out of there. But I mean, that's what we need. We need something to shock our electorate into paying attention because they're too busy fighting with one another over inconsequential bullshit.
What do you think, Andre?
Well, JP is right. The fourth wall. The problem is if we want to have somebody that will emerge as a statement, he will be demonized immediately, and it will be very difficult for the actual system to provide somebody that would be honest enough and that would create hope for people. I don't say it cannot happen, but I don't think it is. We're not there yet.
Just for full clarity, Andre and myself, we both ran for the PPC in the last election.
Well, you did.
Yeah, you were in some of the meetings.
I was supposed to.
You were there in spirit. We got two more. I'll just quickly go through this. So Elaine has a very kind comment. Looking forward to this. She posted this at the beginning. You gentlemen always make the insanity of our current situation palatable and make me feel like I am not alone in what I am seeing and thinking. Be blessed. That makes it worthwhile for me. What about for you, JP?
Yeah, Elaine, God bless you. You always share our stuff, and that we very much appreciate it. And I very much like to know, because like I've mentioned to you, Payman, that I wonder what good am I having? And then I think of this process of me endeavoring to do this, and I think of it as more of a catharsis. Like I'm able to kind of vent into the camera, but it's really, truly, and not to be sentimental, but it's heartwarming that people are finding some solace from any of my words. So thank you very much, Elaine. I'm very much appreciate your loyal viewership.
And what about you, Andre?
Well, I do agree with GP and you, Payment. The recognition that we want is very simple, so people can open their eyes, think by themselves, appreciate, and sometimes disagree with what we're saying. It doesn't mean that we have the truth. We're seeking it. We're searching for it. So thank you.
And we're going to end with one question from Kirk Reese for JP. I know the answer, but this is funny. JP, I noticed you dropped over 1,500 followers the last 2 weeks. Perhaps post a few pictures of kittens to help your algorithms.
Yeah, that's it. I will explain that, though. In the last episode of The Philosopher, the Stoic, and the Teddy Bear, we had Jason from Wiretap Media on, and he was giving me some tips on my deboosting because I had 30,000 followers, and like sometimes my posts aren't even getting 200 views. It's not subtle; they shut me off. I get the odd one through, but he had suggested going through my account, getting rid of the bots and getting rid of inactive accounts, not blocking them, just unfollowing them. That is an arduous job when you have a big following because there's a lot of things to go through. So I actually got a software. I'm not advocating for it, and I don't know how it's going to go, so I'm not even going to name it. But I'm going through my followers list. I'll probably be down under 25,000 by the time I'm done. I have to do it slowly, but it's kind of a last-ditch effort to hope to revive my account.
Andre, if you got rid of 1,500 followers, you might have negative followers.
I will have negative, but I have a question for GP. What, you're using an algorithm to get rid of bots?
Yeah, I'm paying for it too.
No, but yesterday I was in the space of Two Chicks in Politics, and one man said, if you have, for example, if somebody has 3,000 membership, but he doesn't follow nobody, just get rid of him because it goes with the interaction. You have a lot of followers. If they are not, they don't interact with you, or they don't repost, or they don't, you become suspicious. I think sometimes you have to clean your environment.
Yeah, like spring cleaning. I guess. Let me give you the last word. JP, do you have any final comments? And then we'll give it to Andre since he's the special guest co-host.
I just want to say how much I enjoyed this conversation, Andre. I would really very much like to have another conversation with you in the future. I think we could get into a lot of topics that would be very interesting for the viewers as well. But thank you for joining us.
Well, Andre? I've been watching your show with Payment and Kirk. And it is always very interesting because you always go deep enough in topics so we can connect the dots. And this is maybe the most important thing for me as a writer, and try to at least to help people understand what is happening at a certain level. So, and I want to take you, thanks Payman and Kurt for inviting me. It was a very interesting conversation.
Yes, Andre, thank you very much for taking the time to be on here. So for the audience, Chris had a last minute event to attend. So JP and I reached out to Andre yesterday, and we're very glad you came, Andre. You're always a wealth of information. To the audience, thank you very much for investing the time to be here. We really appreciate your loyal following. If you put a question and I couldn't get to it, apologies. There's a lot of questions, and sometimes StreamYard buries them way up at the top, and unfortunately we don't get to them. Again, if you could share the stream, even though we're at the end, we appreciate it. We want to get up our viewership, and we're trying to transition over to Substack. So if you can go over there and follow us as well, subscribe, we'd appreciate it. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your week.